Hello, hello, and good morning. Welcome to the International Mastermind Association Think and Grow Rich show. My name is Galen Bingham. I am the leadership strategist and award-winning podcaster, two-time award-winning podcaster for my podcast, Whiskey, Jazz, and Leadership. But I'm incredibly excited today. Oh my gosh, this is going to be an incredible conversation. I'm going to tell you, before I heard of the book Think and Grow Rich, I heard of Dr. Dennis Kimbro. Before I heard of Napoleon Hill, I heard of Dr. Dennis Kimbro. And today, our guest is none other than Dr. Dennis Kimbro, author of the book Think and Grow Rich, A Black Choice, which I read in 1991. And my dad gave this to me as a Christmas gift and was surprised that I read the entire book in 3 days. So to have him as our guest, I'm going to stop gushing. Ms. Ann, I see you're on because you heard that I was like a big fan. So help me introduce why this is going to be such an incredible conversation as we discuss the subconscious mind with Dr. Dennis Kimbro.
First, let me just say to all of you that's listening live, please take this opportunity to comment, like, and share the podcast. Also, invite your friends to listen to this podcast live and also subscribe to the YouTube. My name is Ann McNeil, and I am the Master Wealth Builder, helping to build stronger and better lives with this philosophy since 1979. And as a part of that journey, like Galen is saying, many of us were introduced to Dr. Dennis Kimbro. And if you don't know who he is, you can Google him, you can YouTube him, you can do a lot of different things. But if you are a follower of this philosophy of Think and Grow Rich as espoused by Napoleon Hill, you must hear his story, his journey. And for each of us that have been a part of this journey, I cannot think of a more iconic, and I will call you an iconic individual, Dr. Kimbro, to really help all of us understand that mindset is everything. Yes, I'd like to say it's the color of my skin. Yes, I'd like to say it's because of my gender. Yes, I'd like to say it's because of my good looks. But the bottom line is mindset. And so when you can connect your wagon, your mindset, your community, if you will, to a group of individuals that have like-minded, that are like-minded and like-spirited, you will normally find Dr. Kimbro's name in the conversation and this principle of the subconscious mind and Think and Grow Rich. So Galen, as always, I shared with Galen when we were getting ready to start, he was talking about how excited he was. And I said, basically, when we have a desire, that's the first principle. When we have a desire, the universe, we've heard this, will conspire to bring you exactly what you desire. And that's what we're going to talk about today, the subconscious mind. But if you have no desire, what good is faith? What good is all of the other things if you don't have a desire first? So I'm not going to get ahead of this principle. I'm not going to go too much. This is not about me today, but Galen is going to introduce our other co-hosts, and we're going to go ahead and get this party started.
All right, Dr. Peter, come on in, man. You and I talk about these concepts, these principles on a weekly basis, and a lot of the projects that we've done together have leveraged these principles. What are your thoughts? How excited are you to be discussing this principle with none other than Dr. Dennis Kimbro, one of your fellow fraternity brothers? One of your fellow fraternity
We're not
brothers.
even going to go down that path. But hey there, folks. Good morning to you. My name is Dr. Peter A. James. Excited to be here as we dive into another edition of Think and Grow Rich, another chapter. But today is so special there, Galen. Why? Because we have a very special guest today that's really going to provide us this unique lens that we all know so well about how we apply Think and Grow Rich. And this unique lens is from the pigment of our skin and why that matters, especially as we think about Think and Grow Rich, but also from a perspective of this week, going into the subconscious mind. Napoleon Hill says you cannot entirely control your subconscious mind, but you can voluntarily hand it over to any plan, any desire, any purpose which you wish transformed into concrete form. So I'm excited to get into this discussion. I've got tons of questions, Galen. Galen, I know you do. So let's get to this, man.
All right, all right. Well, hey, let's jump into this. I'm going to give you just a little bit of bio about Dr. Dennis Kimbro, but I'm going to tell you, if you do a 15-second search on Google, you're going to find a whole lot more than I can possibly share. But he's the renowned best-selling author of several books. I've shared with you Think and Grow Rich, A Black Choice. He's got a couple of books, the one I've got over my shoulder here. He is also an authority on leadership, wealth, and success. He teaches at Clark Atlanta University. He has been named Professor of the Year several times. He's a passionate speaker, certified Napoleon Hill science and success trainer. This guy leaves every room changed for the better, and I just can't express how excited I am to introduce to some and reintroduce to many Dr. Dennis Kimbro. Dr. Dennis Kimbro, come on in, man.
On cue, huh? What's going on, Galen? Hello, Dr. Peter James. Where did you go over?
Oh, wow. Ada Lambda in grad chapter in Atlanta, Georgia, sir.
Oh, okay.
Many moons ago. I think 2000 it was.
Zeta, University of Oklahoma. I was online from September 30th, 1969, and I went over March 7th, 1970.
Ooh. Wow, wow. But listen, we're not gonna stay. We can stay there the whole show there, Dr. Kimbro. But Galen's gonna beat me up if we stay there.
Well, hey, I am just again, I can't wait to get into this conversation about the subconscious mind. And as we shared before the show, Dr. Dennis, we're gonna go wherever you feel we need to go, but we talk about the principles of Think and Grow Rich on a weekly basis and dive into one of those principles with one of our guests. And you have been at big part of my subconscious mind relative to how do we think our way to success? How do we determine where we want to go? How do we put things in place to make sure that those steps are viable? And as Ms. Ann mentioned, everything starts with a desire. What's your early take before we get into our 13 principles video? What's your early take on the importance of the subconscious mind and thinking our way to success before we start trying to take steps?
Well, Napoleon Hill tells you the greatest gift that you've ever been given, and the only aspect of your life that you can control is your thought, is your thinking. But the ironic thing about this, Galen and Peter, is that, Hill came up with 17 principles for success. When you look at laws of success and when you look at his seminal work, Think and Grow Rich. So of these 17 principles, the only reason why he came up with principle 5 through 17, which is pleasing personality to cosmic habit force, is to get you to use the first four. And what are the first four? The definiteness of purpose, mastermind, applied faith, and going the extra mile. Now, the subconscious mind was never a principle. As a matter of fact, he really doesn't talk about the subconscious mind, but he uses the first four to extrapolate the subconscious mind because he weaves it in and out of those four principles. And he gives you the 6 action steps to really drive that subconscious in. Number 1, decide what you want. What in the world do you want? What that you want? All right, so there's your Lord and Savior walking down an old dusty road, and a blind man is at the end of the road, and a stranger nudges into the blind man and says, the master is down there. He says, please take me to him. So he takes him down to Jesus, and the first thing Jesus says, hello, sir, how are you doing? And the blind man says, oh, son of Jonah, you were with Jonah in the belly of the whale. You were with Ezekiel. And then Jesus asked, sir, what is it that you want? And he's doing the same thing to us. He's in the garden with Peter. He says, Peter, who do you say that I am? Well, he wasn't asking that question to Peter. He was asking that question to everybody's on this Zoom call, everybody on Facebook. What is your awareness of yourself? Who do you say you are? Who do you want to be? And the Bible tells us, do you believe in God? Yes, I believe in God. You're in my study right now, and you walk past out there actually in my study, and you'll be extrapolated by 50 million books on both sides of the wall. But here, this is where I do my work. And when I turn around, I'm looking at maybe the 20 books that have had a profound impact on my life. You will see a Father's Day gift that I got more than 30 years ago from my wife, and it was a Bible. You will see the Bible of my mother, God bless her soul, with her 7th grade education. But with that 7th grade education, she educates 2 sons who are doing quite well and the like. And I say, if it's good enough for her, then it's certainly good enough for me. So why am I saying that? He's asking you, number 1, decide what it is that you want. Number 2, what is it you're going to give up for what you want? And you're not going to give up anything. You're not going to give up anything. You can't outgive the universe. Again, cosmic habit force. Everything is in its right place for you right now. And once you make that decision, what you want, and he'll, with these 6 principles, action steps, number 5 is write down what you want. And number 6, look at it twice a day. Read it twice a day. As soon as you wake up in the morning and before you go to bed. And in that, throwing that out to cosmic habit force, you're letting the universe do the work for you. The only reason why W. Clement Stone contacted me, look Facebook, look Zoom, I didn't call W. Clement Stone. W. Clement Stone called me. Does that mean I got to pop the collar, dust my shoulders off, pat myself on the back? That was the universe doing it. I was a nondescript writer, and I was asking all these peak performers and high-achieving African Americans how they did it, what was their mindset, and blah, blah. They didn't know me from Adam. But of all the folks, people ask me all the time, is there somebody out there you wanted to interview, blah, blah, blah? Yes, top of the list. It was Michael Jordan. I tried, until I got to the point where I got a phone call from Michael Jordan's personal attorney. He says, young man, we love your project. We definitely love your project, but you can forget interviewing Michael Jordan. I said, why? He says, I'm his attorney. I handle his money, and he doesn't even return my phone calls half the time. He said, but don't be forlorn. Don't be discouraged. If you come to Chicago, I'll take you to lunch in any restaurant in Chicago you want to go to, and you can interview me. Because there's no one on the planet that knows more about Michael Jordan than me. So the only reason why I'm sharing that with you, throwing all these names out there and asking for all these interviews, it was through subconscious mind. Why, Galen? That's all I thought about.
Oh
That's all I thought about. And there would be everything wouldn't align. When I started the doctoral program at Northwestern University, again, another book that had a profound impact on me, David McClellan. David McClellan for 25 years was a professor at Harvard, and he wrote a book called The Achieving Society. And you listen, Black America, and let me tell you something. People ask me all the time, who's this book, Think and Grow Rich, A Black Choice, written for? And do we need Think and Grow Rich, A Black Choice? And I'm saying those are great questions, but I can't answer them. You should have asked Napoleon Hill that, because that was his final book. So David McClellan, I read this book first year, 1975, and I'm reading this book, and he says in the book that every group, every race, every ethnicity, every tribe, every culture, every people has at least one individual who will extrapolate the keys to success for future generations. And I'm reading this and I'm saying, well, where's the book for Black America? Who did it? Again, subconscious mind. Now, how did that occur? Because my master thesis and my doctoral thesis, I studied wealth and poverty among underdeveloped nation states. And the best advice I was ever given at that time came from my dissertation committee, my chair of my dissertation committee. And he said, Dennis, don't look at your dissertation as a requirement for your degree. Look at your dissertation as your first book. And after I was granted the degree, I turned to my wife and I said, I know my first book, but I'm not going to study nations. I'm going to study individuals. I pulled out a sheet of paper. I wrote 60 names on that list. Bang. And I interviewed those 60. Well, I was working at the time, how we got to Atlanta. I was in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, working for a pharmaceutical company. They transferred me to Atlanta to train as a district sales manager. This will blow you away. And again, in the circuitous way, you want to know about subconscious. So I'm taking holidays, I'm taking sick days, I'm taking vacation days to interview folks. So here I am with my bag and I'm calling on a doctor in the Atlanta area. And we've all gone through this. You go up to the counter, you write your name in, the time that you came in, you have a seat, the doctor will be with you shortly. So I got all my wares in my bag waiting to be called in the back so I can talk to the doctor and nurses one-on-one. So I'm sitting in the waiting area, Galen, Miss Ann McNeil, Miss Peter James, and you guys wrap your little heads around this. So I'm sitting in the waiting area and I just inadvertently, they got an end table with 50 million magazines on that end table. You've been in those doctor's offices. And I just reach over and I grab the first one. What was it? It was an old issue of Time magazine. Who was on the cover? Martin Luther King. And what was the magazine article about? It said when Dr. King led the Montgomery bus boycott, there were only 5 black millionaires in the United States. Listed the black millionaires. By the time I got home, there was no computer, there was no email, there was no text message. I wrote letters to all 5. Only 1 out of the 5 had transitioned, Charles Clinton Spalding. The other 4 were still living. Interviewed them all. Charles Clinton Spalding transitioned, but that didn't stop me to go up from Raleigh-Durham, spend the better part of 2.5 days, interviewed his family, interviewed his business partners, and interviewed customers. So you want to know subconscious? How would 50 million magazines? And I wasn't, if I went to a public library and searched for that magazine, I probably wouldn't find it. But I just,
I feel like then that the reason we're having this conversation is because of my subconscious mind. So I'm just so excited that the universe yielded to my wanting to have this conversation with you. So, Dr. Peter, I know that you've got some questions about some of the inspiration that has led to his books. He's kind of, Dr. Dennis has already shared some of that, but what's your question, Dr. Peter?
Yeah, sometimes I don't even know where to start with this, Dr. Kimbro. And thank you so much for giving us a little bit about the journey and even about what transpired in order for you to write this so famous book for sure. But as you look back on your career, and even from the migration from the pharmaceutical to higher education, how do you see that has evolved and how subconscious mind or even just Think and Grow Rich has helped you to be the success that you are?
well, again, I've always lived my life on purpose. And my wife, we got married and we were seniors in college. Her background was in accounting and blah, blah, blah. And so she was working for a number of companies. And again, here I am as a pharmaceutical rep and stealing time, borrowing time, whatever time to write this book. But the first thing that I did long before, as soon as I got down to Atlanta, Galen, I took flip chart sheets of paper, and same house I'm in right now, and I went into my garage, and the 3 walls in the garage I lined up with this flip chart sheets of paper. And for 2 days, I did nothing but wrote all my life goals. I forced myself to decide exactly what I want. And on the first sheet, the number 1 goal I wrote, number 1, bring Pat home from work. And I wrote it down. And why was that important? Because I'm all about freedom. And I knew that I wouldn't be free until girlfriend was free. And bring her home from work. So I wrote the book and sent it out to several publishers, and I was getting rejections left and right. And many of them were race-based. Number 1, blacks don't read, and if they were going to read, they certainly wouldn't read a business book, and all this and that and everything. Again, subconscious. So here I am, and I was about to say out of the blue, and nothing is out of the blue, all right? It's Good Friday, Easter weekend, and I'm in my home, and I forgot the exact time, but it was like in the afternoon, I get a phone call. And who was the phone call from? It was from a gentleman by the name of Harvey McKay. Harvey McKay. He was number 1 on the per chart in terms of business book. He and Tom Peters of In Search of Excellence, they carved the lane for business books. And I said, oh my God. He was in Dallas, Texas, about to board a flight to go back to Minneapolis. And before he boarded the flight, he grabbed this, the latest issue of Success Magazine. And I had a couple of articles in there. Success Magazine called me up because they were trying to make inroads with black readers and said, Dennis, we want you to write a few articles. I said, take anything out of the manuscript. No, we want you to write it specifically. Harvey McKay was so moved, he called me up. I didn't give the man my number. When somebody wants to find you, they will find you. He called me up and I told him, this is Harvey McKay, blah, blah, blah. He said, I see at the end, I'm reading this latest issue of Success Magazine. Are you Dennis Kimbro? I said, yes. Are you the author of this fourth? I said, yes. He said, who's your publisher? I said, I don't have a publisher. He said, what? He said, who's your agent? I said, I don't have an agent. He said, you got to be kidding me. He said, have you shown this, you got the manuscript? And I said, yeah. He said, have you shared it with anybody? I said, no, just Success Magazine and the Napoleon Hill Foundation. They're the only folks that have. He said, do me a big favor. Can you overnight your manuscript to me? And I said, hold on, Mr. McKay. I put my hand over the receiver. I turned to my wife and I said, this man's out of his mind. I don't know him. And Pat said, the boy, just listen, hush. You're acting crazy now. Hush, this could be your opportunity. Keep talking. He said, can you overnight it to me? And could you give me 48 hours? And if I think that this book is worthy, I'm gonna pass it on to my agent if you don't mind. And I said, hey man, what I got to lose? Well, we're going on year 7 with this. So sure enough, hung up the phone call, went there, overnighted it to him. He got it. And after I did it, I came home and I told my wife, I said, Pat, I must be crazy. He said 48 hours. I know this man not going to call me Easter Sunday. Sure enough. Now that time I remember. I'm on my deck, 3 o'clock Easter Sunday. Harvey McKay called me up and was bouncing off the ceiling. He said, I shared it with my agent. My agent is hoping that you will allow him to represent you and blah, blah, blah. And he said, tomorrow morning, Monday, with your consent, they're going to take that manuscript and throw it out to the top 12 publishing houses in New York. And I said, hold up, pump your brakes, man. I said, let me contact the Napoleon Hill Foundation too, and this, that, and everything. We signed all the papers. And again, bring Pat home from work. That was number one. When I signed the contract for the advance, and they got into a bidding war, and just to be in the room and bid on it, it was six figures. Just to be, I'm not saying the winning bid, just to show them that you ready to play the game. Oh, hi. Oh, this is McGraw-Hill. Oh, hi. How you doing? This is Putnam. Hey, how are you doing? Yeah, Dennis Kimbro, blah, blah. Oh, yeah. Hey, Random House. How are you doing? Good. Fawcett. Hey, got you. I see you. And it was going back and forth like that for 2 straight days. And sure enough, by the end of the second week, of course, it took almost 7 years to get to the end of the second week, Pat was home and never looked back.
Wow.
Wow.
Wait, Galen, wait. He had me at writing them on the wall in the garage.
Yep.
Yeah, that's where he had me. But
Well, he had me at it sat on his desk for 7 years. Right? How long do we have an idea that we believe is the right idea, that it's got something to it, and if it doesn't work in 3 months, we're ready to give up on it. Miss Ann, let me bring you in here. This is only your show, so I see you leaning forward. What questions do you have for Dr. Dennis
Well,
Kimbro?
before I go into the question, I would like to tee up the video, because my question, Dr. Kimbro, which I was one of those that read the book like a lot of people when it first came out, and I was encouraged by your story, the journey, the car, all of the struggles and the challenges. So I'm going to come back to that after Peter tees up the video, because I think that it's so inspiring for so many of us. You know, people see your story, but your glory, if you will, but oftentimes they don't know the story behind that. And I was fortunate, for the past few years to see you in Atlanta during the program, the city does for small businesses, and you never cease to amaze all of us. So I think you already know that. But again, I think that it's so important for people to understand the ups and downs of the journey, because it's not always on the mountaintop.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're going to have Peter's going to go ahead and he's going to not just tee it up, but he's going to introduce the video. And when we come back, if you can share some of the trials and struggles on the journey, because many people will listen to this in the future because it's evergreen. And we really want them to understand that when you have that burning desire, bring Pat home. That 7 years, a lot went on during that 7 years.
Oh, yeah.
And so when we're all on that journey, and I'm not going to get into my story in terms of the trials and tribulations. Again, people see you now, but they've got to understand that you wouldn't have the glory without the story.
Exactly.
And a lot of times people want to skip over we want to skip over the story, but have nothing to share, because you can't teach that which you've not done. So Dr. Peter, if you would tee it up, and then we'll come back and we'll have you share. Thank you.
yeah, good stuff. Thank you so much there, Ann. And folks, I'm not even going to say a whole lot. If you have ever watched this show before, you know that this video is just gives you that great overview of Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich. So give it a listen, allow yourself to digest it a little bit. And then we're on the flip side, we'll listen to Dr. Kimbro talk about his story, as Ann McNeil has so eloquently described.
Number 1 is desire. Napoleon Hill said that everything starts with a burning desire, a compelling reason for doing what it is we do. Step 2 is faith, having belief in our ability to attain that which we desire. Step 3 is what we call autosuggestion. Autosuggestion simply means being very intentional about the things that we are pouring into our thoughts, into our brains, and into our consciousness. Our brains, our minds will receive everything automatically, but we have to work extra hard to make sure that the positive things are what we are feeding ourselves, because those positive thoughts are going to turn into positive actions. Step number 4 is specialized knowledge. No one person knows everything, even about whatever their particular area of expertise might be. And the value of the mastermind principle is using the specialized knowledge of other people. Step number 5 is imagination, the workshop of the mind. Everything starts with our imagination and our thoughts, the burning desire to transform those thoughts into our reality. In order to do that, we have to take a look at step 6, which is organized planning. That is how we crystallize our desire into action, organizing ourselves. Having the thought and not acting on the thought isn't going to get us anywhere. We have the thought, we go through the organized planning to transform that thought into action. Step number 7 is decision. What Napoleon Hill said is the mastery of procrastination. Napoleon Hill said that the antidote to procrastination is simply to make a decision and then move on that decision. Step 8 is persistence. We have to have a sustained effort which is induced by our faith in order to achieve our goals. One of Napoleon Hill's books I love, even the title, 3 Feet from Gold. Those people who became rich during the gold rush in the wild, wild west days didn't do that because they were necessarily smarter or had better information than anyone else. It's because they stayed just a little bit longer. Sometimes people left when they were just literally 3 feet from gold. So hanging in there, being persistent, is step number 8. Step number 9, the power of the mastermind, the driving force. None of us can accomplish anything on our own. Everybody, I don't care who you are, from the most prominent person to the person who might be considered the lowest on the totem pole, everybody has someone who helped them get to where they are. And the power of the mastermind is being able to use those influences around us, use the thoughts, use the knowledge, use the exploration of other people to help us in achieving our goal. Step number 10, the mystery of sex transmutation. This title can be a little confusing, but essentially what the mystery of sex transmutation means is that we oftentimes in our society think of sex as being purely physical. It is absolutely physical, but what Napoleon Hill teaches us is that sex also has an emotional element, and that sex is the strongest of our desires. That if we can take our sexual energy, transform that into positive, creative influences, it can propel us to new heights. And so we spend quite a bit of time talking about the mystery of step 10, which is sex transmutation. Step number 11 is the subconscious mind, which Napoleon Hill tells us is the connecting leap between our human mind and the infinite intelligence, the source of all thought, the source of all creativity. Conscious mind, we spent some time talking about how we use that through the influence of autosuggestion and what we're feeding into our mind. Step number 12, which is the brain, the broadcasting and receiving station of thought. Final step number 13, the sixth sense, the door to the temple of wisdom. This is the final step through which infinite intelligence may and will communicate voluntarily without any effort from or demands by the individual. The principle is the apex of the philosophy. It can be assimilated, understood, and applied only by first mastering the other 12 principles.
All right, there you have it, the 13 principles of Think and Grow Rich. And we have been speaking with Dr. Dennis Kimbro. Again, I'm not going to repeat all of his accolades. Just recognize that this is the conversation that the universe wanted us to have at this point. And I want to bring back in Miss Ann for you to restate your question about understanding his story. And we're getting questions from YouTube already. Before I turn this over to you, Ann, I'm going to say, if you're watching via YouTube, make sure you like this video. Make sure that you hit this the thumbs up icon underneath the video so that YouTube knows that we've got other things going on other than the Mike Tyson Jake Paul fight replays. So hit that thumbs up icon, and Miss Ann, bring in your question again so we can get back into it with Dr. Kimbro.
Yes, thank you so very much, Galen. I was just wanted to just encourage all of our listeners to understand that while you're on that journey to achieve, whether it is your dream, your desire, your purpose, your goals, whatever it is, I really want you to understand the story behind the glory. And so, Dr. Kimbro, I shared that when I first read the book, what motivated me during that point in my life more than anything was I kept rereading the trials, the struggle, the tribulation you were going through, because it encouraged me while I was going through to just continue to hold on to that desire. I've been in this book since December 31st, 1979, and I've been in this book every single week since 1979. And to this date, I've built 5 businesses from one page of that book where he talks about the 6 steps. And so I really just would like for you to take us back there as a part of your journey and share that any of those stories that you would like to share to help our listeners understand that, you know, you've got to do the work, the inner work, and it's not always easy, and it's easier to quit. So if you could just share any of those stories, thank you.
Well, it's really not work if you're completely engaged. And when you look at burning a desire, you know, we've got 50 million different desires. You might have a desire to paint your house, or get a new piece of furniture, get a car, new outfit, blah, blah, blah. But a burning desire is an inner candle, an inner flame that can never be extinguished. And though the worst may come before you, doubters may come, cynics may come, critics may come, quote unquote, things, events, circumstances might happen, might occur. You will use that doubt, you will use that criticism, you will use the cynicism, you will use these obstacles to propel you forward. Now, when I look back to those particular bumps in the road, and yeah, close to a 7-year ordeal, there were several. I lost 2 cars in the process. I lost, thank God, you know, I've never had my lights cut up, but we've had our water cut off twice. And the second time the water was cut off, they cut it off on a Friday. And I lied to my oldest daughter when she came home from school. She came home from school, put a glass under the kitchen sink, under the kitchen faucet, and water didn't come out. And she said, Dad, she said, what's wrong with the water? What's wrong with the faucet? And I looked at that girl in the eye and I lied to her. I said, oh, that's because they're working on the pipes outside. You weren't working on any pipes outside. Dad didn't have the money. I was 2 months behind on my water bill. And the second time they cut your water off, they imposed a surcharge. I couldn't pay the bill or the surcharge. But you listen to me, cyberspace. See, I was only looking at one point in time. I wasn't looking at the big picture. And that's what Lewis Carroll was asking Alice in the Looking Glass. And I'm going to get back to that story. So after they cut the water off, my wife said, man, what are you going to do? And I said, Pat, Monday morning, I'm going to just go down to the DeKalb Water Company and I'm going to just bare my soul, man. If I had it, I would pay him, blah, blah. She said, that's a waste of time. You better look for somebody. I'll call my mother. I said, Pat, don't do that. Don't. They've done enough. Monday morning comes along, and I don't know if anybody's ever been in the water company. You go in there, you get a number, and you stand in line till they call your number. Well, there were 3 customer service reps. One of the 3 was a Black female. And I said, if I'm going to bare my soul, I'm going to do it to her. And they had old Social Security desks with glass partition, and everybody had a computer on that desk. And I had my number, and the numbers were going, you know, nominally, and folks were going in. And I saw that this sister was not going to be my clerk. I let folks ask me and go ahead and get in the front of. I was positioning myself strategically. And finally, she called my number. And I went into her little cubicle, and as God is my witness, I got down on bended knee. And I told her, you're going to think I'm crazy, but for the last 5-6 years, I've been writing a book, throwing my whole life, every dime, every penny that I could into this. I don't know if anybody is going to read it, but if you just give me one chance, I promise you I will pay it, blah, blah, blah. She looked to her left, looked to her right, make sure that her coworkers weren't watching. She typed up a number keys on her computer and erased my entire day. But what did she say after she erased it? Because I was still down on one knee. You know what she said to me? She said, pick up your bed and go walk. These clowns out here saying, God tests you. Why in the world would God test you? God not test you. God gave you the dream. God doesn't place you on the battlefield. He lifts you above it. So that, and so I can tell you, but we're only looking at, so I said, in 1869, when Lewis Carroll wrote Alice in the Looking Glass, I was asked, said, Dr. Kimbro, can you give us the top 5 business books that you would suggest, blah, blah, blah. So I gave him 4, and you know the 4 that I found. And then one of them was Alice in the Looking Glass. And I got pushback. And they said, that's a children's book. That's a bedtime story. I said, the hell it isn't. I said, when Alice, she's going through Wonderland, and the looking glass is a mirror. And Lewis Carroll, the writer, 1869, he asked Alice 3 questions. And entrepreneurs, I'm asking you, you got a dream? I'm asking you the same questions that Lewis Carroll asked Alice when she looked in the mirror. Question number 1, Alice, what do you see? Tell me what you see, Alice. Question number 2, Alice, do you see what you want to see? Or do you see what the world wants you to see, Alice? And question number 3, Alice, will you take the extra step to create what you saw so the whole world can see it? That's entrepreneurship 101. You listening to me, Black America? Do you see what you want to see? Or do you see what, I was about to say MAGA, I was about to say what they want you to see? Come on. We're the only race, we constantly talk about slavery. We came over here on the slave ships. We built the 240 years and change. But no one ever talks about 100, 200, 300 years before slavery, we had more than 5,000 years of preeminence. No one talks about that. We were so far in first place, we couldn't even tell who was in second place. We never discussed that. This is an aberration, man. If you've done it before, well, damn it, you can do it again. Doing what you were doing when you had 5,000 years of first place. Well, during that time, what did we have? You go back to ancient Africa, you go back to ancient antiquity, and you see little figurines of all the great Cleopatras and all the great pharaohs. And on those little figurines, they had headbands on the headdress. And what was on the headbands, Black America? It was a cobra. People fear the cobra. The cobra's omnipotent. The cobra's powerful. They run from the cobra. Well, why was the cobra on the headbands? To get you to protect your mind. To get you to protect your mind. That's all you need. Number 1, you need adaptability, change, or you're going to be changed by change. You know, look, adaptability, all that means is you got the ability to pivot. That's all. But number 2 is focus. And what is focus? Limit distractions. Limit all that nonsense, because your greatest achievement is not my PhD. It's not writing this book. It's not 3 times Professor of the Year. Not that I got a beautiful family, daughters, granddaughters. That's not my greatest achievement. My greatest achievement is that I had the ability to think what I want and then implement and execute it by limiting distractions. And that's all Napoleon Hill was talking about. Yeah, he gave you 300 words, But you take those 300 words in the same chemistry class that you would take a glass of water and you come out and you get 2 parts hydrogen, 1 part oxygen. Well, you take Think and Grow Rich, take it into the same chemistry class, assay it's down to its finest components, and number 1, it says, be not afraid. Faith, be not afraid. Look, damn it, if you know who walks beside you every day on this journey called life, you would never doubt or fear again. So number 1, be not afraid. And number 2, believe. Believe. I'm one of the few individuals who met women, the singers from those singing groups. Destiny's Child, Sister Sledge, and In Vogue. So there I am, years ago, more than going on 2 decades, Sony Columbia Records, who signed Beyonce and Destiny's Child to the first record. And they brought me in. They said, Dr. Kimbro, we're going to bring you in, give us 2 hours of strategic planning, tell us the same thing you tell your business students and blah, blah, blah. Okay, go down there. And then afterwards, they had a lunch. And I stuck around, and there I am with all these executive vice presidents from Sony Columbia, and they were sharing stories when Beyonce Knowles was in the 8th grade, 13 years old, and on her doorstep, and how she dreamed big and this, that, and everything. Well, she didn't have nearly the self-confidence, and she was about to quit the music profession, all right? So fast forward the videotape. There I am interviewing Bonnie Sledge of Sister Sledge. And she told me during that interview that, yeah, they had name recognition over in the Far East, but they couldn't get any traction here in the United States. And as a matter of fact, Sister Sledge tried and tried and tried. All 4 of those young ladies had degrees from Temple University, and they were about to blow the dust off their resume and go into corporate America and forget this singing stuff. They just couldn't crack through until Nile Rodgers wrote that song, We Are Family, specifically for them. And they said, we can't sing it till we take it to our manager. They took it to our manager, and the manager says it's not a good fit. And I said, what did you do? Said, we fired our manager. Then fast forward the videotape again. There I am with 3 or 4 singers of In Vogue. Now, why would I share that story? Believe and be not afraid. Because when I asked In Vogue, how in the world did you do it? All the stuff, all the nonsense that you went through. And what did In Vogue tell me? Man, we wanted to be just like Sister Sledge. And there I am with Sony Columbia Records, and I met one of the singers from Destiny's Child, and I said, how in the world did you guys do it? Said, man, we wanted to be just like In Vogue.
We got the first of all, the chat on YouTube is blowing up. They might need to redo the algorithm because we got so many comments in the chat on YouTube. Got a question from V. Lynn Whitfield. She wants to know, after bringing your wife home, how did you prioritize your other goals? How did you prioritize? Okay, number 1 is bring my wife home from work. How did you determine what was number 2, number 3, number 4 after you wrote down all your goals?
Well, let me flip the script to MBA right now. And that's a great question. Okay, so there I have all my goals, and I review my goals constantly and the like, and they change and whatever. But anyway, number 1, you can, in terms of your goals, you can prioritize them either by numbering 1, 2, 3, or 4, or you can letter them A, B, C, or D. So after I brought her home, I concentrated on number 1. I concentrated on letter A. And what was that? In terms of my financial goals. And after I reached my financial goals, I didn't go to B and I didn't go to 2. B and 2 now becomes 1 and A. And you've constantly asked yourself, what is the most effective use of my time right now when setting goals? And you heard me say this before. You lived a normal life according to Pew Research, according to the Census Bureau, 77 years. I hope I live a lot more longer than that. But you do the calculus. That's what? 4,000 weeks, or that's 30,000 days. So what am I trying to say? I'm trying to say, Time is not running out. Again, cosmic habit force, ain't nothing going to happen to the universe. Time is not running out. But baby girl, your life is. And you've got to ask yourself the critical entrepreneurial question. What is the best use of my time right now? So that's a great question in terms of goal setting and the like. But Hill gives you all of the information that you need. And Hill is not sacrosanct. Now, I'm a researcher. I'm a college professor. That's what I do. And I got just as much, I was even just equally interested in not only Napoleon Hill, but the people who had a profound effect on Napoleon Hill. And who were those folks who had a profound effect on him? Top of the list, Orison Swett Marden. You got to read Orison Swett Marden. Orison, Orison, Swett, Swett, Marden, Marden. He wrote more than 100 books and pamphlets in his life. Napoleon Hill read Orison Swett Marden like you were reading the Sunday gospel. Didn't go anywhere without one of Marden's books under his arm. All right, so these 100 books and pamphlets and blah, 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 here you are in my study, and you walk out there, I got about 60, 65 of Marden's books. Success Magazine, and they knew my interest in Orison Swett Marden, set up an interview where I got a chance to interview his last living survivor, his youngest daughter, Mary Marden Fitch. And she said, "Oh, Dr. Kimbro, man, you're a kindred spirit like my father, man. I remember coming home from school and my father would have somebody in his study that he was interviewing and this and that and blah, blah, blah." And she sent me about 5 of her father's books. So number 1, Orison Swett Marden. Number 2, Joseph Mercy. Number 3, Ernest Holmes and the like. I mean, these are all the folks that had a profound impact. So what we read, when you read The Law of Success, that is really Andrew Carnegie's thinking, not so much Napoleon Hill. That was the volume that took him 20 years to write. Now listen to this. After the 20 years when he releases The Law of Success, some of the folks who Hill had interviewed, they were still living. And they saw that way Hill had changed his life. I mean, he was dead broke for almost 2 decades, and he did human nature what a lot of folks would do. He went out and he didn't buy 1 Rolls Royce, he bought 2. And some of the folks, those high achievers and peak performers that he interviewed, saw the way his lifestyle shifted, grabbed him by the back of the collar around his shirt and said, "Young man, didn't you learn anything in those 20 years? And then that's when he came back to the realization, said, "Oh, this is an ongoing process and the like." So those are the folks that I'm still enamored with, because there is no secret to success. If there's a secret, that's exactly it. There is no secret. We're looking for a secret success. We're looking for a key to a door that's unlocked. What do you need a key for? The door is unlocked, my brother. So why are you in this prison? He's telling you this. He's telling you in cosmic force. He's telling you in infinite intelligence. Where did he get infinite intelligence from? He got that from Adam Smith. Adam Smith, who wrote Wealth of Nations. And I'm still waiting for the day in which we really have a capitalistic society. We don't have a capitalistic society. We are so far. Adam Smith, the Scotsman, who came, he's the godfather of capitalism. And what does he say? I got the book. You don't have it? Let me go back here and get it for you.
Oh, put in the chat, because I understand time is running out. I want you to put in the chat.
Running
Is
out.
it okay? Put in the chat. Is it okay if we go a little longer? Give me an okay if you are fine with us going a little past the top of the
Yeah,
hour.
I'm just finish this story. This is it. Adam Smith in The Wealth of Nations. This is his definition of capitalism. I pursue my divine self-interest, and Galen pursues his divine self-interest. And who's going to benefit? The greater good. And then he says in The Wealth of Nations, if one party blocks the other, it is no longer capitalism. If I pursue my divine self-interest, but I block Galen from pursuing his, all bets are off. Look, damn it, who has been more blocked than Rhythm Nation? Who's been more blocked than damn everybody on this call? So what type of it's socialism of the wealthy. That's what we operate under. So come on, man. And what do we know about Adam Smith? Number one, he was anti-slavery. He was a moral philosopher. And in The Wealth of Nations, what Napoleon Hill calls infinite intelligence, Adam Smith calls IH. What is IH? It's invisible hand. He says, chase the dream, do the work, and the invisible hand will bless it. Galatians 6:9. You will reap what you sow. Well, how do you sow? Your thoughts. You're sowing right now. And you're going to reap that harvest. So make sure your thoughts are positive. So there you are, man.
Oh my gosh. Now you guys see why I was so excited about having this conversation. Miss Ann, I want to bring you back in because I think I heard Dr. Kimbro say I stopped counting after 8. After he said it 8 times, I stopped counting, but he said write down your goals. One of the things that you have every year is this annual meeting where you require that we come in with our life written down and our goals written down. Talk a little bit about that annual meeting and how people can be a part of that.
Everybody's up underneath submission. You know that, right? So I just want to say that this podcast has only just begun. For those of you that came late and you're trying to figure out what we're doing and who we're talking to, we're speaking today with Dr. Dennis Kimbro that wrote the book, Think and Grow Rich, A Black Choice. And you can go back and listen or re-listen to the replay if you came in late. I really want to continue to encourage us before I get to the annual meeting. I want to encourage all of you, please be sure to subscribe to the YouTube and click that notification bell so that you will receive the notifications about this podcast. We're here every single Saturday on YouTube Live and McNeil YouTube. Subscribe. And every Saturday for 52 weeks, yes, live, even if I'm here by myself, we are discussing a principle from Think and Grow Rich. Mm-hmm. And today we're discussing the subconscious mind with Dr. Dennis Kimbro. Now, in the book, Napoleon Hill asked us to do a survey. He says, survey your life every year. Dr. Kimbro just discussed how he went to the basement, he wrote his life goals. And many of us who are entrepreneurs or wannabes, we think that our business is our life. Well, your life is a business. Your life is a business. And I contend that it has 10 different categories. And when I read this book over and over again and formed my first mastermind group in early 1980s, 82, 83, we started answering the questions that Napoleon Hill asked in the back of the book when he said, do a self-examination, do a self-analysis of yourself, your life. And as we began to answer those questions, we started realizing that we had a lot of area of growth. But we also began to realize, as Dr. Kimbro suggests, and by the way, this is one of my favorites, the Master Key System.
Oh, yeah.
Get a Napoleon Hill head, right?
Yeah.
And so we began to pull together a meeting that we had twice a year, where in January, we would come together, small group. We started at 10 of us, and that 10 grew to 20. that grew to 50. And when we got to 101 home, I realized a meeting could no longer be in my house. We needed to move it to a hotel. And so now we've been meeting at a hotel now, gosh, maybe 30 years, somewhere thereabouts. And we do this every single year, usually the first weekend in January. And we host an annual meeting for your life. And this is what I want to encourage us to think about. Your life has, I suggest, 10 different departments. And we ask you to write a goal in each of those areas. So kind of like consider yourself as a publicly traded organization where every quarter your investors are going to see how are your earnings coming based upon basically your goals. If you say you were going to do something, did you really do it? And then at the end of the year, they will assess whether or not they're going to invest in you. So just pretend you are a publicly traded corporation. And these are the 10 areas of your life. We encourage you to write goals in. First, your spiritual area, then your family, then your finances, then your education, your health, your personal development, your profession or your career or your business is next. And then the recreational area, the civic area, and then your creative area. We encourage you to write your goals for 6 months, 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. And right now, personally, I'm in my 44th year of writing these goals in all 10 areas. So we come together in January 2025, January 3rd through the 4th. We will be at the Marriott, Galen. So this has changed. We're going to be at the Marriott in Boca Raton, but the details are on the internationalmasterminders.com website. You can go to the International Masterminders with an S.com website and you can register. You can also go to Eventbrite and just search Think and Grow Rich annual meeting, and you can register there. And I promise you that you will have a life-inspiring experience when you really start looking at every single area of your life. And as you can see, we have the children, we have families, and everybody gets to sit at a table with only 2 or 3, maybe 4 at the most individuals. And we encourage you to bring your life in writing. And if you show up and your life is not in writing, we have something for you. It's called a list of those questions that you must answer before you come into the room. I am very excited, Galen. And as many of you know, I've been doing this long enough now to see my children and grandchildren succeed in all of the areas of their lives that they desire, and also my friends. And so with that thought, we'll come back to the podcast, but I really do want to come back to Dr. Dennis Kimbro and tee up another question. And that is, if there was one thought or one concept or one particular principle that resonated with you more than any others that you'd like to share with our, it does not have to be subconscious mind, it can be any of them, what would that be and why?
Well, that's easy to me. Definiteness of purpose, living your life on purpose. I had a presentation a couple of days ago right here in Atlanta, and I shared, I had an opportunity to sit down and interview and talk to Andy Young so many times. And he told me that there were 3 times that Martin Luther King was about to give up the nonviolent movement. It was too heavy for him. He didn't think that he could really change this country. But each time that he got to that place mentally in his thinking, in order to snap out of it, he called his team together and said, gentlemen, let's review our principles again. And the 3 times, number 1, when Medgar Evers was shot in his carport in Mississippi. Number 2, when those 4 little girls were bombed in the church in Birmingham. And number 3, his own impending assassination. And each time Andy Young told me, Ambassador Young told me, he got together and they got to the point where, come on, Martin, we've been over these principles 50 million times. You wake us up 3 in the morning, we can tell you know that we know. He says, I just want to hear him one more time. I just want to hear him. So what are the principles that you live by? What are the values what's the value or the principles that you look for in others? What are the values or principles that you absolutely positively refuse to compromise? So definiteness of purpose. People talk about, well, God's will. What is God? God is love. And what is will? Will is thought. So what is God's will? Well, think love.
Mm.
What did Mary Baker Eddy say? Divine love has met and will always meet every human need. You can have anything in life that you want if you're willing to love enough. But it begins with you. It begins with self-love. Of all the books that Hill wrote, to me, and I got them all back there, he wrote what Think and Grow Rich, or Black Choice was number 17, all right? Even after his first book, Law of Success, he self-published. And I got about 3 of his self-published books back there. But to me, his all-time best book, The Master Key to Riches. Dr. Kimbro, why The Master Key to Riches? Because Hill finally comes clean. He tells you and the world his definition of success. He tells you that it's a 6-pointed star. Peace of mind, health and energy, loving relationships, financial freedom, financial independence, worthy goals and ideas, and then last but not least, which is really like Abraham Maslow, self-actualization. And what is self-actualization? As human beings, we need food, shelter, and clothing. And then we get to a point where, I want better food, shelter, and clothing. Then we get to the point where we want designer threads, the absolute best food. Well, then you get to a point where you want food, shelter, and clothing for your fellow man. Self-actualization. That's the game of life. And what do we know about the game of life? It's unlike any of the game that you have ever played. And it's not played on a basketball court. It's not played on a tennis court. It's not played on a football field. Well, where's the game of life played? It's played in your mind. And unlike any game that you ever played, there's no competition. There's no opponent. You are the only participant. And the goal of the game of life is not money, how much you can possess. Although one of the aspects of the game of life is the wise, productive use of money. But what is the goal of game of life? It is the goal, and it's the gift and the treasure that surpasses any gift that you could ever be given. Dr. Kimbro, what in the world are you talking about? The goal and the aim of the game of life is the peace that passes all understanding.
Okay.
Come on, people. Come on. Let's go. You got the information. If I look at every indicator for financial success, Black America, if we are in last place, we are in next to last place. What's up with that? What the hell are we doing? There are 195 countries that belong on Earth. 195 on Earth. 165 of them belong in the UN. But when you look at these 195 countries, we are number what? 13, 14, 15, 16 in terms of wealth? So our problem isn't money. Our problem is the wise and productive use of money. We give all our money away. Change your thinking, mindset matter. Well, I gotta eat apple, I gotta walk around the block, I gotta get healthy. Look, damn it, you don't get healthy, you are health. You are, just be who you are. Well, I'm dead broke, I'm poor, blah, blah, blah. You're wealth, be who you are.
Mhm. Oh my gosh. Okay, so you guys see why Dr. Kimbro is on my Mount Rushmore of speakers and authors to talk to. I got to go around and just ask everyone what insights what insights have you got from this conversation as dare I try to land this plane uh, Dr.
Galen, I
Peter,
gotta interrupt. We're not landing it just yet. We're circling
we're gonna circle
the
the airport a
tarmac a
couple
little
more
bit
times.
more as well, because we got a lot of questions. We got a lot of comments in the chat for sure. And everyone's subscribing to all that Dr. Kimbro is saying. And Dr. Kimbro, you've alluded to this. Galen, allow me to ask another question if I could.
Please, please.
You've alluded to this, Dr. Kimbro, about, our times, our current times, and sometimes how we feel, especially we as Black people, we feel demoralized. We feel strapped. We feel like we're always on the other end of the spectrum. And a big part of what I'm hearing you say is we have to definitely shift our mindset. We have to think differently. We have to think differently about ourselves. Especially as you've matured, how do you continue to be persistent with that, in light of what the environment presents, in light of what the administration presents, in light of what we sometimes feel like is a never-ending plight to a certain extent? What keeps you motivated, sir?
Well, like I said early in the podcast, because look, man, when we talk about, what do you see? If you and I went down to Savannah, Georgia, and we looked out across the Atlantic Ocean, you would say to me again, don't look with your mind, excuse me, with your physical eye, because your physical eye will look to you. Look at it with your mind's eye. So we're looking out across the Atlantic Ocean, and you would say, Dr. Kimbro, it looks like the sky and the water meet. Well, the sky and the water never meet. Otherwise, there's no such thing as gravity. If we stood on railroad tracks and we looked down the train tracks, and you would say, it looks like the tracks are coming together. Well, the tracks won't come together. Otherwise, the train will fall off the tracks. So what am I telling you? I'm saying see with your mind's eye, because your physical eye will lie to you. So what does that have to do with us being discouraged? And what does this do with us about being despondent? Well, I took care of that question in my second book, Daily Motivations for African American Success. And you turned to December 30th, and the title of that page, Somebody Survived for You. And I tell the story about a mother. She comes down with cancer. She goes to one doctor, and one doctor said, just enjoy yourself. Your days are numbered, blah, blah, blah. Another doctor gives her the hope of living 2 to 3, maybe 4 more years with this treatment. And she chooses the second treatment. But she writes a letter to her children, I've chosen to try to survive for you. This choice will have some horrible costs, including pain, loss of my sense of humor, and moods that I won't be able to control. But if I might live 1 minute longer, that might be the minute which you might need me the most. For this I intend to struggle tooth and nail, so help me God. Well, Black America, look at the big picture. Somebody chose to survive for you. Somebody. Years ago, before my wife transitioned, she says, I got to know who I am. I said, Pat, what do you want to tell me? We're going to go get DNA tests. And we got DNA tests. And I came to the realization, again, somebody chose to survive for me. And what did my DNA say? That my lineage is Sierra Leone and they were sheep herders. But that still didn't tell me who I am until I knew that the tribe that I came from is the Luca tribe in Sierra Leone. And part of the problem with Black America, we don't know who we are. There are more than 3,000 tribes in Africa. Who are you? Nothing happens by, come on, man. You're not Jonathan Livingston. No one flies alone. You got a past and you got a future. You just occupy this time in space. I tell my students all the time, why was I born in 1950 and you were born in 2002, 2003? Well, the universe wasn't ready for you then. They weren't ready for you. They weren't ready for your gifts. But they were ready for me. Why was my father born in 1914 and I'm born in 1950? Well, the reason why he was born, the universe was ready for them. All the stop signs move, all the stop lights are green. And you got one goal. And what is that goal? Go back, get your Bible and read it over and over again in the Bible. Complete thy noble task. In other words, do what you've been sent here to do. Do what you've been sent. There's only something that you could do. Come on, man. So
Ah,
that in the securest way, you asked the question, and that's why I said, man, look, you know, when Hill talks about sex transmutation, and I'm watching the video, and yes, but let me give you the backflap story. All right, we got the 10 Commandments, and thou shalt not commit adultery. Do you even know what that means? It's got nothing to do with sleeping around. If he didn't want you to sleep around, he would say, thou shalt not sleep around. But he didn't say that. He said, thou shalt not commit adultery. And what is adultery? ADULTERY. Is being the grown-up in the room. Being the grown-up in the room. And when we look at Black America, if you put a gun to my head and say, Doc, if you could choose the individual who's the grown-up in the room when you look at the millennium of Black America, who would that individual be? And I would have to say Black grandmothers. Black grandmothers. Because Black women as a species, and then the adult lineage of Black women, Black grandmothers and Black grandmothers, more so than any other species, they ask the most important question in the universe. And what is that question? What about the children? What about the children? So what does that have to do with they're the grown-up in the room? Grandma, can I go with my friend? No. How come? Because I said so. And boy, how dare you ask me a question? No, you ain't going out. Now hand me the remote control. I ain't got to answer to you. You answer to me. That's what we need. Be the grown-up in the room. If you see something that's going sideways, see somebody talking right but walking left, be the grown-up in the room. And we see that all the time. You show with a president having sex with a porn star. So who is violating that commandment? Well, I'm going to tell you who's violating that commandment. The folks who not only voted for him, but his vice president. Mike Pence should have gone to him and said, Mr. President, no. You're not going to occupy the Oval Office. I'm going to be the grown-up in the room, because you can't do that. You can't do that and stand behind that emblem and that shield. He was the one who committed adultery. That is the only answer that we need. Men, be a man. Be a man. Now, some of you going to give me some pushback, but Gabe, I got to say it. They were talking about Kamala Harris getting the male vote and this, that, and everything, and Obama speaking to the men. Look, I'm a Black male. I know the issues that I face. We got issues with employment. We got issues with education. We got issues with incarceration. But the one issue that is just, is just as noteworthy, and we have got to address it. No one wants to address it. We push it under the table. We hide it in the back room and back closet. But let me tell you something. You don't deny your problems. You transcend them. So, Dr. Kimbro, what is that issue? We got issues as Black men and women. The number one challenge we have is how we deal with peak performing and high achieving Black women. We got so many brothers who are challenged by that, who don't know how to deal with it. Well, I'm telling you, be the grown-up in the room. If you find somebody that's good, don't look for someone who's better. Find somebody that you can build and you can grow with. Because the name of this game is growth. It's growth. That's what this game is about. There it is, sports fans. There's your 1 hour masterclass.
Oh my gosh, masterclass.
On Napoleon Hill 101. And let me tell you this, Galen. All right, now you got Science of Success trainers, and you got this and you got that. The day that book was released, and W. Clement Stone contacted me, there were only 7 other individuals, and there was no certification process. They were either friends, personal friends of Napoleon Hill, or personal friends of W. Clement Stone, who were allowed to teach this. And when the book was released, W. Clement Stone had a board meeting, called an ad hoc board meeting, brought all the board members in, introduced me to them, introduced them to me, gave them all autographed copies, and I led a discussion on what I found over those 6 or 7 years. And then Stone said, he said, and Dennis, got one more thing, congratulations. And he sent me the shield and everything. Now you're allowed to teach the science of success. I became number 8. I was the only person of color, and I was the youngest. I was 40 years old. Now you got everybody in the universe teaching that blah blah. And I got no problem with the blah blah blah. But I think I can give you some backflap stories that no one else knows. I think I can add a little bit of color and context into the narrative, man, so we make sure that we get this right.
Oh my God. Masterclass is an understatement. This has been an incredible conversation. So, Dr. Peter, I'm going to come to you. Give me like the top 2, maybe the top 3 insights that you got from today's conversation, and how can people get a hold of you if they want some insight from Dr. Peter James?
Thank you so much there, Galen. And I love this. I love this conversation, Dr. Kimbro, for a number of different reasons. Even Galen, myself, and Miss Ann, as we have these conversations on a regular basis, and it's good to reinforce. It's good to sharpen. And what I'm getting from you is things that I may have been slacking on that I got to tighten up. And I even wrote down some of the things that I know about, but I got to lean in a little bit more on. And so for the audience, those of you who are listening, I got to ask you, how are you living your life on purpose? Right? Are you actually physically writing down your goals? As Dr. Kimbro mentioned, what are the principles and values that you are living by? Right? And remember that the game of life is played out in your mind. But then once you are aware, what is your intentionality? What do your behaviors look like thereafter? Right? So this has been phenomenal, and we need this. It's a reason that we should be going to church regularly, because if we stay away too long, we will start going to our own devices, right? So we need to get back on center, get back on track. And this is what I took away from this conversation today. So thank you so much for this, Dr. Kimbro. Hey, folks, my name is Dr. Peter A. James. I am the high performance coach helping you to shift your mindset. You can find me on shiftyourmindset.com or LinkedIn, primarily are the 2 big ones. However, if you are very, very interested in looking to start 2025 off on a great note, I encourage you to think about owning your own career and what that might need to look like for you. And so the Own Your Career Challenge is live. Please let me know if you are interested in it. It is a super low price, literally super low price, that would help you to take back control as opposed to you giving your control away.
And where can they get that link, Dr. Peter?
Absolutely. I will put that link in the chat for everyone. How's that?
Fantastic. All right, Miss Ann, what about you? What insights? This is probably the quietest I've heard you of all of our conversations.
Ever.
Your head was down. You were probably writing the entire conversation. What insights did you gain, and how can people get a hold of you?
Well, first, I would like to put something in the chat for you. Could you please put Dr. Kimbro's masterclass link to his site in the YouTube chat, so that everybody listening can click that link while we're live, so that they can follow him. I didn't count the pages. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18. I have 18 pages. 18 pages, yes. And I realized today, thank you so very much, Dr. Kimbro, then I have not begun to scratch the surface. I have not begun to scratch the surface because I too began to read what he read, the authors. And so most of the ones that you've mentioned, I've read their writings, especially Orson Sweet Martin and some of the others. And also, well, you know, the foundation, Don Green, he has everything. I'm also certified with the foundation. But my major takeaway is that this is a journey. It's not a destination, everybody. And once you set a goal, you must reset the goal and reset the goal. And like he shared about his goals when Lynn asked the question, yes, they move up, but that dollar goal, not only will it move up, but it will continue to move and change, if you will, to a larger number. But regardless of whatever it is you do in terms of your goal setting, focus on becoming the person. That's my major takeaway. It is the becoming that never ends. And like he shared about the health, which is it really is our wealth. We are already healthy. We want to become more mindful, if you will, about how we manage the choices we make. When we eat all of those things, I'm not going to get into all of that. It has just been an honor. Les Brown has been here a couple of times, and you know him very well. And one of the things that he shares, I knew him when he was riding on the back of the garbage truck. And so we've been friends, yes. And he shared, you know, and you knew me before I knew myself. And so I think that for many of us in this space, if you will, from the National Speakers Association and all these other groups, the Napoleon Hill Foundation, all of these groups, the mindset is what we have in common. And how we go about sharing that with the world. So the purpose and the different things that you talked about, I think that it's about the bottom line for me is service. And so I want to thank you so very much. Galen is going to introduce himself, then we're going to have you do the same. But I really, if we don't do anything else today, I really want to encourage individuals to follow you in every possible way they can. So before we get off, Galen and Peter, I just want to make sure we put that information inside the YouTube chat so that everybody has an opportunity to follow and purchase everything that he has to sell. So thank you so very kindly.
Absolutely. Miss Ann, how can people get a hold of you if
Oh
they
my
want your
goodness.
insights?
You know, it is so it's so unimportant right about now.
Well, it's important. It's important to me because I'm going to tell you, you occupy a space on that Mount Rushmore for me. And I have grown so much from sitting at your feet. So how can people get a hold of you if they think that there's anything that I've said that's been insightful? It was probably an adaptation from Miss Ann McNeil.
Well, for those of you that follow me, and I'll turn around a little bit, you can see that I am actually, I'm actually at a resort, right? I am hosting my life and legacy retreat right this moment. And I told everybody who's participating that they must watch this podcast, right? And so as a part of what I'm doing with this philosophy and helping elevate individuals to the next level, I host an annual meeting, a retreat. You know, it's not for everybody. I'm not for everybody, because if you don't want to do the work, then you don't contact me. Okay. Okay. But you can reach me at annmcneil.com. That's ANNMCNEILL.com. And then that's it. That's it. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Forgive me. I made a promise that every day that I would share my book. Yes, I did. I've written 6, but this is a daily date with myself that I wrote from. And Dr. Kimbro, you remember Sitting for Ideas that Dr. Gates did in the book Think and Grow Rich, when Napoleon Hill talked about the guy who sat for ideas in the dark room. I wrote this as a result of sitting for ideas, modeling what he did. I set ideas for years, and I began also Julia Cameron's book, The Artist's Way. And I began to realize as I journaled, my journal took on a life of its own, where my mind just automatically every morning between 3 and 5 o'clock in the morning, I would just sit for ideas. And whatever those ideas were, I just started, I asked the universe, give me 10 opportunities every day. 7 days a week, and I would write those down. And I wrote 2 or 3 things I'm thankful
Mhm.
for, 2 or 3 things I'm grateful for. What are the desires of my heart? And I would do that
Mhm.
every day. And then I realized it became a process. So this is just simply a journal with those questions in there, prompts journal. And if you're interested in journaling your ideas and sitting for ideas, you can get a daily date with myself journal. You can go to my website or any of the other places. But that's basically it for me, because I promise I don't do a very good job as much as I could to self-promote, but it work in progress. I'm a work in progress, right? I'm so busy doing the work that it comes in time. So anyway, thank
Praise
you so
God.
much, Dr. Kimbro. Appreciate it. Galen.
Fantastic, fantastic. Well, this has been again a milestone step for me. I have so enjoyed this conversation and getting some more time with Dr. Dennis Kimbro. I've been blowing up his chat line over the years, and have really enjoyed the investments that he's made in me. Directly and indirectly. My name is Galen Bingham. I'm the leadership strategist. You can find me all over social media. But the best way, the most fun way, is to check out the podcast, Whiskey, Jazz, and Leadership. We are on
Yay!
every podcast platform and have been acknowledged as the 2024 winner, Signal Award winner for Best Host, and the Davy Award winner in the self-help category. Check us out. You'll see I had conversation with Dr. Peter James, and I've had Miss Ann McNeil on the show as well. And I'm going to go on record and say, Dr. Dennis Kimbro, I've got to have you on the
Oh
podcast
yes. Oh
to have
yes.
that conversation. This has been an amazing experience. One of the biggest things that I took from this conversation is that we stand on the shoulders of someone. Someone sacrificed for us to be here. This past week, I had the opportunity for the first time to work in Birmingham, Alabama. And although I was there for a day and a half, this is the birthplace of the civil rights movement. I've got to go somewhere. So I went to the 16th Street Baptist Church.
Yep.
I had heard of it. I had seen pictures of it. I'd seen videos of it. But I tell you, it wasn't even open for tours. But I stood there across the street and I felt something. I couldn't describe what it was that I was feeling. I couldn't articulate what I was hearing. There was something about just being there, and I couldn't describe it until today's conversation. And Dr. Kimbro said, someone sacrificed for me to be here. How dare I not sacrifice for the future generation? So that's what I'm taking from today's conversation. Dr. Kimbro, thank you so much. What are some final thoughts from you, and how can people get a hold of you if they won't take my word for it? They need to hear for themselves how much you.
Well, if anybody wants to get a hold of me, the easiest thing to do is just contact one of my students. Because they can find out, where are you? What are you doing? Anyhow, Dr. Dennis Kimbro speaks. I have a team in South Florida that handles all of my social media and the like, and I am on, seems like, every platform in the universe. So I would love to hear from you, and basically that is it.
All right. Well, hey, you have been watching or listening to the International Mastermind Association Think and Grow Rich show. Every Saturday morning at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, we break down one of the principles of Think and Grow Rich as compiled and authored by Napoleon Hill. And again, another plug for this book. This is my introduction. Think and Grow Rich, a Black Choice. There are 2 inscriptions in this book. One was from my dad in 1991 when he gifted me this book on Christmas Day, and then I read it in 4 days. And then the other was when I had the opportunity to meet Dr. Dennis Kimbro.
And let me show this to you, Galen, if you can see this.
Okay.
What is this? This is Napoleon Hill's last 100 written pages. This is W. Clement Stone gave this to me. From Napoleon Hill's Hamilton typewriter to my desk. That was, and you can see, I don't know if you can see it, Blacks Are Growing Rich, Napoleon Hill. 100 But the thing is, he had profiles of individuals, but he never interviewed. And I had the interviews. I had the actual interviews. So that's how we got together, and from 100 pages. And he didn't have any chapters. He just had basic themes. And I told Mr. Stone, I said, I'm gonna just use these themes as chapters. He said, go ahead, do what you want, but just stick with his voice and his concept. But like, he had T.M. Alexander, who handled Martin Luther King's insurance for the Montgomery bus boycott. He profiled him. I had the actual interview. Those 5 Black millionaires, he had profiles on them, but he didn't have the interviews. S.B. Fuller, John Johnson of Ebony Magazine, I interviewed him 2 or 3 times. So there you are.
All right. All right. Well, hey, this is what you get when you tune in to watch the show live. I would encourage you to to subscribe to Miss Ann McNeil's YouTube page and hit that bell so that when we come on with another amazing guest, you will be the first to know.